that's right, everybody. Welcome back once again to another edition of the Best Seat in the House podcast. As always, I'm your host, Rob Kramer, joined by my co-host, Daniel Bobo Curlin. And Dan, how you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing good. A little bit disappointed from yesterday's game. I just feel like this entire season for the Rangers, it's like I feel like that energy vampire from What We Do in the Shadows. His name is Colin. I forget the character's last name. I feel
Yeah.
like he must have made the trip to the Garden all the way from Staten Island all season because it feels like this team got zapped of he must have zapped the energy out of this team after last year. I feel like.
Yeah, well, you could definitely say that about a lot of these guys on the Rangers right now. And the Rangers definitely have come back crashing down to earth over the last couple of games. And you know what, Dan? Let's just get in right to the Rangers talk right off the bat here. We'll save some of the baseball talk, everything else for a little bit later. But since your head is at the New York Rangers, I think I'm right there with you, man. And last night, the Rangers lose a tough 2-1 game. Now, let's not forget it was against the Winnipeg Jets, who right now statistically are the best team in hockey. But the Rangers didn't have um, any room for error in this one. Unfortunately, they've put themselves in a spot where they basically have to run the table. And, I mean, not literally run the table where they have to win every single game. But, man, I mean, if the Rangers have, 17 games left, something like that, you got to win basically 14, maybe 13 out of those games to get into it because of the spot they've put themselves in right now. Now, this being their fourth straight loss, the only thing that kind of saves their ass in this run right now is that two of those losses were in overtime. However, one of those losses was against Ottawa that the Rangers should have won that game in regulation. So, sure, they've come out and they've lost the next three games after that, but this would be a lot more palatable of a stretch if the Rangers were able to get that freaking victory in Ottawa last Saturday. But unfortunately, that was not meant to happen. And what are you saying, Dan?
That game, I feel like I was scared that I almost broke the TV. Thank God it didn't, because thank God that bottle of water was empty, because it was like one
Yeah.
of those, just one of those single use water bottles, right? I was drinking out of, right? After the Rangers had lost in overtime, I just got so upset I threw it, and I feared that the TV in the living room broke, but it didn't, because I got scared for like before I just calmed down because I saw the thing hit the TV and I said, oh my god! And then luckily didn't. Luckily it wasn't heavy enough, because I feel like just the slightest thing, these TVs can't take abuse like the older TVs did. I can tell you that they can't take abuse. Even
No, you're right about that.
and luckily that water bottle was not hard enough and heavy enough to do any damage to the TV, because I was freaking pissed off. I did break a remote though.
Well, look, the frustration that this Rangers team has brought out in this fan base this year is just beyond the pale. And I got to tell you, Dan, one guy that I'm particularly fed up with, and there are a lot, because these aren't the guys I was going to start with, but the Rangers haven't been getting anything from Alexi Lafreniere and Vincent Trocheck for weeks now at this point. And look, I'm a big fan of both of those guys. I love Lafreniere, former number one overall pick for the Rangers back in 2020. This is a guy the Rangers gave a big time extension to at the beginning of this season that kicks in next year for $7+ million a year. And that was based off a really good start to the season that Lafreniere had, and a really awesome playoff run he had too. Because let's not forget, Alexi Lafreniere was one of the Rangers' best players in the postseason last year. In the games the Rangers played, he had 8 goals and 6 assists for 14 points. He was phenomenal last year in the playoffs. And then obviously we can't forget all the contributions of Vincent Trocheck as well. But those guys have completely gone silent. And the other guy that's really just getting on my nerves this year is Keandre Miller. I really thought when the Rangers went out before the trade deadline last week, and they acquired a defenseman, Saucy, from the same team that they ended up getting JT Miller from the Vancouver Canucks. So the Rangers went out there, picked this guy up. He's a 30-year-old defenseman. He's under contract for this year and next year. It makes sense. I don't mind bringing this guy in. But when I saw them make that move, that said to me that that's going to be the end of Keandre Miller. I thought Keandre Miller was going to get flipped at the trade deadline, potentially for one of these young forwards from the Buffalo Sabres. That didn't end up happening. The Rangers still have Keandre Miller. And I got to tell you, Dan, Miller is a restricted free agent after this season. He's making decent money right now. He's going to want $5 million, maybe more than that, this offseason. The Rangers cannot pay Keandre Miller anything close to that. This guy is a turnover machine. He blew key turnovers from Keandre Miller this week, cost the Rangers 2 games. I love the upside of Miller. I was a big fan of him when they drafted him all those years ago. I believe he got drafted back in the 2018 draft. I was a big fan of Keandre Miller. You see the flashes of brilliance from Keandre Miller every once in a while. We saw the backhanded goal he scored just a week or two ago. He has that ability. But the problem is that he's a defenseman. You need him to play defense. And this guy just can't do it. And he is so prone to the big turnover. And how many times do you just see him standing there with his hands on his hips, watching the guys go the other way? I'm sick of it. I like Keandre, but it's time to move on. The Rangers should have traded him last week prior to the deadline, but what they should do definitely is not give this guy big-time money in the offseason. What do you think about that, Dan?
Yeah, exactly. I just feel like they need to somehow trade him during the offseason. They need to unload him, and I feel like the Rangers need to make the most out of all that cap room they're going to have during the offseason and all that draft capital they're going to have. They need to really do some. They need to make a big splash during the offseason very badly.
Yeah, and one of those guys that me and you have been salivating over for the last couple of months, ever since he went on the trade block and got dealt to the Carolina Hurricanes, was Mikko Rantanen. Well, sorry, Rangers fans, that's not going to be happening now because the Carolina Hurricanes couldn't figure things out with him, so they turned around and flipped him to the Dallas Stars, who then turned around and gave him an 8-year contract worth over $12 million a year. So Mikko Rantanen is no longer an offseason option for the Rangers, which a lot of people thought he was going to come here. And that's not happening this offseason now. One guy who will be here, however, next year is backup goalie Jonathan Quick, who the Rangers extended earlier today, a 1-year, $1.55 million, very reasonable contract for a backup goalie. I like them keeping this goalie tandem together for another year. Jonathan Quick has still been pretty good this year, even with the lapses in defense the Rangers have had. You got to give Quick credit, and I like him coming back. What do you think about this deal, Dan?
Yeah, I like that deal. I definitely like that deal. Also, I noticed the schedule. I'm tempted because of how cheap I saw tickets for that last game of the regular season, which is going to be out in the island. I might, if the Rangers look like it could be in contention, probably go down to that season. I might have to do my Ranger fan duty and take advantage of that. And
really, what were the prices you were seeing over there?
I saw them like 118, sometimes 99. I've been checking on and off because I'm just waiting to see where the Rangers are in a couple of days before I pounce on that ticket, because I'm seeing tickets in that range somewhere in one of the corners behind one of the goals where you'd see the Rangers score twice.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, to potentially see that in the first, and to see them score in the first and second. I might pounce on that and take the LIRR to UBS right there. I might pounce on that and take advantage of that, and seeing the Rangers that close in what could be a very key game.
Yeah, and we know that the Islanders basically have tapped out on this season. They traded one of their better players, Brock Nelson. A guy's been there his whole career, so they moved off him, traded him to the Colorado Avalanche, which Rangers fans, if that sounds familiar, that's because last week the Rangers shipped off Jimmy Vesey and Ryan Lindgren to the Colorado Avalanche as well. But, there's another question that's coming up about the Rangers as we get ready to move on from them. Is their head coaching? I'm a big fan of Peter Laviolette, but I don't know, man. It seems like a lot of people are really getting on him about his inability of helping these younger players progress. Now, I could throw out at you. We saw Alexis Lafreniere's best season last year under Peter Laviolette. So what's the difference between this year and last year? It's the same head coach, just different results. And then, if you're going to knock his inability to help the young players, then what's the deal with Vincent Trocheck that's taken a step back this year? What's the deal with Mika Zibanejad too? So my question to you, Dan, is, because this is something that's coming up right now, is will Peter Laviolette be here in 2025, 2026? And one of the arguments I hear for getting rid of him is that the New York Rangers are entering a period now where they have to get younger. Now, you can say that all you want. I understand, okay, the Rangers do have some good young players. They also got Othman coming up, Brett Berard, and some other guys that I'm sure, like Gabe Perreault, that will be knocking on the door before the end even of this year, going into next year. But the thing that I say to you, Dan, is, how young is this Rangers team? Let's really take a look. Igor Shesterkin is knocking on the door of 30 years old already. We just went out and acquired 2 defensemen this year, Will Borgen and the guy Saucy they got from Vancouver, who are both basically 30 years old. Their core of offensive players, meaning Vincent Trocheck, Artemi Panarin, Mika Zibanejad, all those top guys are hold on.
Second, I'll be back. I gotta cut out for a second. I'll be back.
Okay. So Dan is going who knows where, but that's the thing I don't understand. If you want to say, okay, this team's going to have to go in a younger direction, that's one thing, but how is that based in reality at all, with all the guys that I just listed being in their 30s or almost in their mid 30s for some of these guys? Artemi Panarin is going to be 34 years old next year. So what are you going to do? I mean, the one guy that would have made sense for the Rangers to bring in would have been potentially their as we're being rejoined by Bo here, the guy they let walk to Edmonton last year, the AHL coach, Chris Knobloch. Now, Chris Knobloch, is a hell of a coach. It looks like he's good at developing players, but what I'm saying, Dan, is what's the difference of who the head coach is right now? These guys just stopped playing this year for whatever reason. I don't really think you can really blame Laviolette for it. And like I just pointed out, all the Rangers' good players are in their 30s. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. It's like there's a lot of players in their 30s, and there's a lot of players that are young players. So I feel like it's like a big question mark if it's worth it to bring Laviolette back next year, to fire him or not. And I feel that depends on who's the coaching staff is available before you make that decision to fire Laviolette. Because I feel like maybe they might give him one more year, and if that doesn't come to fruition, then they would fire him. But that's gonna be all depends on who's available, who they can replace him with, because this team could easily look like it could be a contender, but they need to bring the right coach that could balance that out. That a coach that could coach that's going to be able to coach a contender and be able to work well with the younger players on the team.
Yeah, man. So We're gonna really be on the roller coaster here for the final month of the regular season, hoping the Rangers can pull this thing out. Before we move on from the Rangers, though, I do want to say that they do have a big game coming up against the Minnesota Wild tomorrow night, 8 p.m. And if the Rangers are gonna keep a heartbeat in this playoff race right now, tomorrow night against the Minnesota Wild is a game they absolutely have to win.
Yeah, exactly. This is a must win. This is a very winnable game. I will be just completely furious if they don't win this. Like, I don't need to break two remote. I don't need to break the replacement remote because I already broke. Because I just already just had to get the, like, when they were asking the people at the Spectrum, the cable company, asked me why I had to get replaced the broken road. I just said, yeah, that Rangers game, and luckily the worker that at the the equipment center, whatever it was, the service center, he said happened to be a Rangers fan also, so got exactly what I meant by why when I said the game is pretty much what caused me to accidentally toss fling that remote and
he
it broke.
understands. He understands the frustration of the 2025 Rangers team we have to watch this year.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
makes sense.
yeah, exactly. And he just passed me on. He says, yeah, he had this $25 NHL gift card. He says, yeah, take this for thank you for being a customer. He just threw that in.
Very cool. Very
Yeah,
cool, man.
yeah. I'll probably burn the little sign for myself. I don't know how to, but yeah, he just handed me that as a thank you because he says he's a Ranger fan. He didn't have to use for it, but he knows that he decided he was going to give it to a fellow Ranger fan.
Very cool. And with that, though, we'll switch to the Knicks brothers from Madison Square Garden. Let's check things out. The Knicks right now, as the Knicks are out west for an extended West Coast trip out there right now. And unfortunately, early on in that, they ended up losing Jalen Brunson about a week ago in the Lakers game where they played out there. First game out west, Brunson goes down with a really badly sprained ankle. You could tell how much pain he was in as he was writhing on the ground. And the second he hit that ground and grabbed his ankle, every Knick fan just saw our season going up in smoke. And we really didn't know what to make of it until we got the word from head coach Tom Thibodeau and the Knicks training staff that it's not season ending. It's at least 2 weeks, and he'll be reevaluated, they said, in 2 weeks. So you figure at some point, right? I would say that there's a chance we see him back right around Major League opening day, but sometime in the area of March 27th, maybe we'll get him back, which would be really big for the Knicks. But Dan, when you saw the captain of the New York Knicks, Jalen Brunson, go down and grab that ankle, what were you thinking in that moment?
When I saw that game, it took a lot of strength to be silent because that was a West Coast game. And I
Late
was
night,
like,
late night.
yeah, because I did not want to wake up people because I'm like, the course come playoff time, regardless of what time the game ends and stuff. I'm making full noise. I'll do it at playoff time, but if a regular season game like that, West Coast are probably a little bit more toned down. That time if a game starts after 10 o'clock like that, but I was like, it was the stuff I was yelling like. I trust me. I was like, I did not want to wake up Mr. Malunigan when I was upset at that sight, seeing Brunson injured like that. I was just upset. I think freaking I freaking got a wellness check with my girl. I'm pretty so something like that. Curb Your Enthusiasm episode. He says, so that's how crazy it was.
Yeah, it was just a devastating blow to all of us Knicks fans. And hey, they ended up going out the next day and getting smacked by the Los Angeles Clippers as well, which was not a good loss. The Lakers loss you can kind of understand. LeBron and Luka both playing good ball. Knicks end up losing Brunson. couldn't finish the game off, took the loss. But that loss the next day to the Clippers is what really stung. But the good thing for the Knicks is, though, they took a couple of days off, still out west, went up to Sacramento this time in Northern California, and took down the Kings 133-104. But, dropping 2 out of the first 3 on that West Coast trip has hurt them, because now when we look at the standings for the Eastern Conference right now, the Knicks currently sit 3rd, but they have been hovering between about a game and a half and 3 games behind the Celtics. Well, now they're a full 5.5 games behind the Boston Celtics. And, in the NBA, with not too much time left, that's going to be a really hard hill to climb for that one, to overcome a 5.5 game lead by the Celtics, especially with how good and consistent they've been this year. But on the bright side, the Knicks seem kind of locked into that number 3 spot, because the Milwaukee Bucks are 5 games behind them. So the Knicks now have a 5-game lead on the Bucks, for the Knicks being the 3rd seed and Milwaukee being number 4. So we're kind of in no man's land right now, where we're not really too close to the Celtics, but we're far enough ahead of the Bucks we don't got to really worry too much. But the Knicks are going to have to keep, look, they just shook, they lost 3 out of their last 4. So they're in a bad stretch right now overall. But as long as they can wake up and get a couple more wins, finish out this, this West Coast swing on a strong note, then, by the time Brunson gets back, they should still be in pretty good position, right, Dan?
Yeah, exactly. As long as they're right up ahead enough that they just hold off, avoid this the play-in tournament. As long as they can avoid that, and hopefully they can then hold off like that, especially until Brunson comes back, and I feel like they'll be set up good going into the playoffs.
Yeah, and that's what the main thing is right now. You just got to kind of hold the fort down until Jalen Brunson comes back. Now, an interesting article actually came out earlier today. I believe it was in the New York Post, but I forget exactly what media this came from. But I do want to give a shout out to whoever got this, because this is a very interesting thing coming out of the Knicks today, where Mikal Bridges, who, as we all know, is in his first year with the Knicks, first year under Tom Thibodeau as his head coach, actually went out of his way to ask Tom Thibodeau to play his starters for fewer minutes per game, which is very odd in the NBA, because we remember last year going down the stretch and into the playoffs. I mean, how many times did Josh Hart play 48 out of 48 minutes of every single game? And even when they got into the playoffs, Josh Hart was playing every minute of every game, whether it was going to overtime or whatever they were doing. And, Brunson would, be playing most of the minutes, if not all of them. Dante DiVincenzo was playing most of the minutes, if not all of them. So the Knicks had a lot of guys playing a lot of minutes last year. Now, Mikal Bridges was not on that team, but he went out of his way and told Thibodeau that he thought that the starters should play fewer minutes of game. He has confidence in the Knicks bench, which, look, I think part of the reason why it's one of the things me and you have talked about all year, too. The Knicks don't have a good bench. The Knicks don't have depth on that bench, especially with Jalen Brunson out now. So I understand what Bridges is saying, that this can, help the starters in a way by keeping them a little bit fresher. But look, I'm sorry, Mikal. And he did say that Tom Thibodeau was receptive to his comments. So it didn't, fall on deaf ears, or it didn't anger the head coach. But I got to say, look, I understand what you're saying, but shut your mouth and play basketball when your head coach tells you to play basketball, because he is a very good head coach, in my opinion, one of the best head coaches in the league. And if he doesn't see fit to go to this bench that is not nearly as talented as the Knicks starting lineup, I don't blame him. Now, I understand you're going to have to go to the bench every once in a while, but, he's going to go to the bench when he feels it's necessary. And whether Bridges likes that or not, I've never heard. That's another thing too. I've never heard of a player wanting to play less minutes a game. It's always you always hear a guy, oh, he's playing 35 minutes a night. Yeah, but I could play 40. Oh, this guy's playing 40 minutes a night. I could play over 40 minutes. I've never heard in my entire life a player coming out and saying, yeah, I'm playing 42 minutes a night, but I really wish I was playing 35. That's never happened. Like,
Yeah.
what do you think about this, Dan?
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I've never seen it happen. He needs to maybe, in the words of The Rock, know your role, shut your mouth. and they should only limit that doing anything in that direction once we've clinched and assured ourselves that we're avoiding the play-in tournament. Once that happens, then I might say, yeah, maybe at that point we've clinched as far as we can, and just keep the players fresh going into the playoffs. Then maybe that I could say that, but now is not the time to be doing this.
Yeah, that's a great point. I'm totally with you on that. If you wanted to, once the Knicks have assured themselves of being in that top 6, so you don't got to worry about the stupid play-in tournament. Yeah, I'm totally with you. Okay, if he wants to rest some guys and decrease minutes and have a little bit more of a balanced rotation at that point, I totally understand that. But look, when you're fighting tooth and nail, especially if you're in a situation with the Knicks right now where you still are 0-7 against the top 3 teams in the league, that being the Oklahoma City Thunder, the Boston Celtics, and the Cleveland Cavaliers, you can't afford to be sitting guys, and you can't afford to say, hey, you know what? I like this kid Tyler Kolek. Instead of playing him 7 minutes a night, let's play him 14. Or how about, this kid Shamet had a good night last night. Let's play him 15 minutes instead of his regular 5. That doesn't make any sense, especially when if they're playing well, okay, I can understand leaving them out there for a couple of more minutes. But if these guys are shooting bricks and dragging the team down, you're not going to leave them out there for 20 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. It really, really doesn't make sense. Yeah. And they need to just shut up and just stay in their lane for the rest of the way, because it's like the more some of these guys, you can't really their strength is the benches in whatever amount of minutes they're getting.
Yeah, it's true, Dan. It's totally true, and I think you said it perfectly and hit the nail on the head when you said, quoting The Rock, know your role and shut your mouth. I think you hit a home run on that one, my friend. And look, we're not knocking Bridges for saying his opinion, but it's also like, man, come on, you got to know when to speak up. With the old, you got to know when to hold them and know when to fold them. On that one, that was a fold them, in my opinion. So we'll keep you updated on that. Now the next game, they're still out west. Still going to be out west for a couple more games as the Knicks come back at you tonight. Me and Dan are recording this on Wednesday evening. Tonight, in just a couple of hours, out there, the Portland Trailblazers will host the New York Knicks at 10 p.m. Eastern time. So we'll be getting ready in just under 3 hours for tip-off there. So it'll be interesting. Portland has not had a good season. They're 28-38 this year, currently 10 games under 500. So, Dan, this is a game too. No Jalen Brunson, but the Knicks, you cannot lose this game tonight. This would be like if the Rangers lost to the Nashville Predators a couple of weeks ago. You cannot lose to one of the worst teams in the Western Conference right now.
Yeah, exactly. They got to win this game. I better see they won it when I watch it, because I might have to watch part of it and then go to sleep. I'll have my DVR set on record in case I end up going to sleep at some point during the game, because just how it is for these East Coasters like us trying to watch these games like at this time.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to basketball, when the fourth quarter seems to go on the longest.
Especially those last 5 minutes. You're 100% right about that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, what are you going to say?
Yeah, so I kind of had to make use of my DVR for this one. Believe me, if this was the playoffs, I'd be staying up the whole time. But this one, I might have to do that and then watch the rest tomorrow. Some
That makes
point.
sense. That makes sense. Let's hope the Knicks give us a reason to stay up late tonight for anybody that's going to be a night owl and stay up, and let's hope they give you a reason to enjoy watching it tomorrow morning on DVR if you have to do it that way too, which I'm sure a lot of people have to do that as well. So yeah, one of the last games out west now for the Knicks. They'll be playing Golden State after that, so we'll keep our eye on that. And now, Dan, for a couple of quick hits, because we're not going to go too crazy with the NFL stuff right now. We'll jump back into some spring training baseball in a minute. But I did want to do a couple of quick hits on the NFL free agency update that we're talking about for our Jets and the Giants. We'll get to who the Jets signed as quarterback in a sec, but officially the Jets released Aaron Rodgers today. It becomes officially official after the June 1st, but they designated him as a post-June 1st cut today for cap reasons. So Aaron Rodgers, even though we've known this for weeks at this point, will be a former New York Jet sooner rather than later. And that's why I wear my Aaron Rodgers 8 right here. There we go, in solidarity with one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever wear the green and white. Shout out to Aaron Rodgers. I'll never forgive the Jets organization for getting rid of him in the manner in which they did. But the Jets did, however, replace Aaron Rodgers rather quickly in this free agency, absolute insanity we've seen over the last couple of days, where there's been a lot of moving parts. But the Jets did sign former Chicago Bears quarterback, former Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback from last season, Justin Fields, 2 years, $40 million, $20 million a year, pretty easy. $30 million of the 40 is guaranteed. So the Jets guaranteed him a lot of money to be here. I'm not impressed with it. I'm cautiously optimistic. I'm not, but I'll tell you this much, Dan. You will not be hearing me as a Jet fan, at least until he starts showing it on the field. You're not going to hear me being like, oh, Justin Fields is the next great quarterback. Oh, Justin Fields is going to lead the Jets to the playoffs. You're not going to hear that from me. I don't believe it. I won't believe it until I see it, because the fact of the matter is that what I don't understand is that the New York Jets now suddenly think they can develop a quarterback. Let's go down the list of quarterbacks the Jets have absolutely failed with over the last 15 years, that now they think they can take somebody else's garbage, I don't want to call them garbage, but somebody else's project, and turn them into something worth having. Let's see. The Jets struck out with Mark Sanchez. After they got him to 2 championship games his first 2 years, they failed to develop him, ended up having to cut him for nothing. Let's see. Also, Geno Smith. The Jets did nothing to develop Geno Smith. The Jets did nothing to develop Sam Darnold. The Jets did nothing to develop Zach Wilson. And now, so you're telling me, after 4 quarterbacks that the Jets themselves drafted over the last 15 years, and the Jets struck out on every single one of them, you're going to tell me that those guys, that this team is going to be the one to develop Justin Fields? Why would I believe that? Aside from the fact that when was the last time Ohio State produced a good quarterback to begin with? Now you're going to tell me that the Jets are going to take this Ohio State quarterback that's had no success at the NFL level for the most part. He was 4-2 last year at the Pittsburgh Steelers, and he got benched for Russell Wilson by Mike Tomlin, who's one of the better coaches in the league. What does that tell you? I don't know, Dan. What do you think that the odds of this stuff with Justin Fields works out with the Jets?
I just feel like this one has disaster written all over it. The Jets really, if they were going to try to develop a young quarterback, their best bet would have been to stick with Aaron Rodgers, draft a quarterback in the draft, the best quarterback available in the draft, and let that quarterback be a sort of an understudy to Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, I'm totally with you, because then too, the Jets could have taken any of the quarterbacks. People are saying that Shedeur Sanders might fall to the Jets. A lot of people are down on them right now. Could you imagine the excitement if the Jets had gotten a chance to draft Sanders and then put him for a year behind Aaron Rodgers, people would have been going nuts about that. Or even if the Jets had drafted Jackson Dart or somebody like that, it blows my mind that now we're going to sit here and keep our fingers crossed and hope that Tyrod Taylor can help develop Justin Fields. I just don't get it.
Yeah, I really don't get it. It's just gonna be disaster. I'm telling you, you're gonna need that. I don't think there's anything gonna be strong enough to get you through next season. I
A
feel
lot
like,
of whiskey. A lot of whiskey. That's what's
yeah,
going to get me through next season.
yeah, a lot, a a shit ton of whiskey. I can tell you that. I feel like the liquor store might be having to tell you to ease up on buying the whiskey. I feel like whatever liquor store you go to, I feel like is going to
Yeah,
be
we should have
closed.
Jameson as a sponsor after the last couple of years and whatever we're going to be seeing this year.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That's how bad it's probably going to be.
Yeah, so my hopes are not exactly too high with that, and especially the thing that annoyed me is that, you know, Aaron Glenn, the Jets' new head coach, who I loved as a player so far, hate as a head coach, and the guy hasn't even coached one game for my team yet. Uh, Aaron Glenn went out and said that he didn't want this to be all about the quarterback. He didn't want this to be all about Aaron Rodgers. He didn't want to be answering questions about Aaron Rodgers. And what I say to that, Dan, is does he not realize that this is 2025 in the NFL? Does he not realize that everything in the NFL is based around your quarterback? So no matter who your quarterback is, you're going to be answering questions about him. Look, what was one of the biggest things that the Giants had to answer last year? What are they going to do with Daniel Jones? What's the deal with Daniel Jones? Are they going to extend Daniel Jones? Are they going to keep Daniel Jones? Are they going to move on from Daniel Jones? That's the biggest question. What was the biggest question now for the Jets? It's their quarterback. So what are you going to be talking about all offseason? Oh, gee, do you think that this that this kid that the Jets can turn into something, or do you think he's just going to be the same stiff he was in Chicago or Pittsburgh? You're going to be answering questions about your quarterback no matter what. It would have been nice in your first season as a head coach in the NFL to have a Hall of Famer to fall back on. Now you've got a kid that you're going to have to keep your fingers crossed that he's got his head screwed on straight all year.
Yeah, exactly. It's a disaster in the making, and it's pretty much unacceptable.
Yeah, man. And one other quick hit on the Jets is that they re-signed Jamie Sherwood, 3 years, $45 million. He was the middle linebacker that took over for C.J. Mosley last year. So congratulations to him. That's a nice move for the Jets, keeping one of their own, which they haven't done a good job of doing in recent years. But one thing on the Giants before we move on from football and check in on some spring training baseball, Dan, is that the Giants now look like that they have a decision to make between quarterbacks that they want this season. Aaron Rodgers and the Giants, it seems kind of lukewarm. Does Rodgers want the Giants? Did the Giants want Rodgers? Who really knows? They're kind of playing it by ear right now. But to be honest, Aaron Rodgers is kind of running out of destinations at this point. So who knows what's going to happen there? But the Giants do have a schedule a scheduled visit this week with Russell Wilson. So Dan, what do you think about that? If you had your choice between Rodgers or Russell Wilson, who would you rather see the Giants bring in?
I feel like Wilson's on a really downturn, and I feel like Aaron Rodgers is a good quarterback to go, especially with the fact that the Giants are very likely to draft a quarterback in the draft. So I think it would benefit that quarterback that we draft as to be under the tutelage of Aaron Rodgers for that 1 year.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Exactly the same thing we were just saying that the Jets could have done with Rodgers is what the Giants could do this year. And the Giants have a better draft pick than the Jets do this year. So no matter what the Giants do, no matter what happens in front of them, the Giants are going to most likely come away with one of those top two quarterbacks in this draft class. So to have the ability to sit him for a year behind a guy like Aaron Rodgers would just be really great situation for the Giants. So we'll have to keep our eye on that. Russell Wilson is due to visit with the Giants later this week. So who knows if that's going to go well? Who knows what Rodgers is thinking? But either way, it's going to be interesting to see how that pans out. Now let's flip over here, Dan. We'll round things out here of the show today with some Grapefruit League baseball. And unfortunately, the one thing we've got to talk about is injuries. And there are a lot of them coming from spring training this year. The Mets and the Yankees might as well be holding their spring training in a in an infirmary, because that's how injured these guys have been. Right now, the biggest one, though, that we're all going to be talking about all year is the Yankees losing their ace, Garrett Cole. That's right, the $300 million man who the Yankees, have invested a lot of money in the right arm of this guy, and the Yankees upped that money to make sure he didn't become a free agent this past season. Now he's going to miss all of 2025. He's probably going to miss a good portion of 2026 as well. Dan, when you hear something like this, me and you aren't Yankee fans by any stretch of the imagination, but Garrett Cole is one of the best pitchers in baseball, and seeing a guy like this go down is not good for the game.
Yeah, it's not good, and I just feel bad for him. Just everything he's got to go through, even as human, just recovering from an injury, because I've seen it with relatives recovering from injuries, them getting back to where they want to be. And that's what Garrett Cole has to go through.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, it's going to be a long time till we see Garrett Cole looking like Garrett Cole again. Now, there's a chance, maybe we see him at some point late next season, maybe August or September, when he's trying to ramp it up again and get back out there. But for all intents and purposes, we are not going to see a fully healed on a regular schedule Garrett Cole until probably the 2027 season. And that's just a shame, man. That means we're going to have 2 full seasons where the Yankees are going to have to figure out a way to patch things up without their ace. And, things could be worse for the Yankees because, they did invest a lot of money in Max Fried, and you can look at Max Fried as a guy now that basically is coming in to replace Garrett Cole for the next 2 seasons. And he'll be making his second start of the spring tomorrow against Detroit. So, as bad as it is with these injuries, man, and as Met fans, me and you have seen this time and time again over the past. We've lost Matt Harvey for the year. We've lost Noah Syndergaard for the year. We lost, Zach Wheeler for the year. So we've seen this quite a bit over the last 10 years, not to mention just last season. It wasn't Tommy John surgery, but losing Kodai Senga for basically the full season in spring training. So we've seen this song and dance before, but the Yankees made it easier on themselves by going out there and bringing in a big guy like Max Fried to help solidify that rotation.
Yeah, exactly. So now they're lucky they got Max Fried, and he's gonna have to really carry a lot of weight and try to pull off a comeback. The pressure is that even greater for him now.
That's true. That's a good point too. It's a good point too. Now, he would have had to slot in as a number 2 behind Garrett Cole, which would have been enough pressure in itself. But the Yankees, however, now don't have that luxury, and he's going to be, for all intents and purposes, their ace now. The one other thing on the Yankees too is that they're mashing the ball early in spring training. The Yankees seem like they're dropping double-digit runs every day, so that's one thing they're going to have to do too. You've got a little bit of a banged-up Cody Bellinger, but Aaron Judge and all these guys. So the Yankees keep keeping them healthy. The one thing they're going to have to do now is score runs.
Yeah, exactly. That's the one thing going to do, and that's easier said than done. Because though I think last year where the American League felt like weak, I feel like some teams have improved. So I feel like the Yankees just made their competition a little bit that much tough. It's going to be that much tougher. Yeah, because I feel like the Red Sox are going to be hanging right in there with the Yankees this year.
The Red Sox are much improved. I agree with you on that one. So, I don't know about the Blue Jays. I've been really high on the Blue Jays the last few years. I'm not as high on them anymore this year now. They've really underachieved the last couple of years, and then obviously the Orioles, who we all know have that ridiculous young talent, but I think losing Corbin Burns is going to hurt them this year, and I think a couple of other pieces that they lost this offseason is going to come back to bite them in the ass too. So while they still might be a good team and tough overall, I don't think we're going to see that same level of dominance from the Orioles that we did last year.
Yeah, exactly. So I just feel like they could. It's probably these injuries have leveled the playing field in the American League, especially in comes in terms of the Red Sox probably being able to keep pace right there with the Yankees. That could come down to September, depend
Yeah.
depending on what the Yankees are able to do, and depending if they're able to hang in there in contention, because that's going to be another question mark. Are they going to be able to be right there at the deadline?
Yeah. And we know the Yankees are going to be in position to make themselves a deal no matter what they're doing there. All right. Now, the last thing we're going to wrap up here with, Dan, before we get out of here, is a little Mets talk. And Dan, we talked about the injury bug biting the Yankees. Well, the Mets, have not been so lucky themselves. And the injury bug reared its ugly head in Port St. Lucie over the last week, where Francisco Alvarez, who unfortunately for us Met fans, we've seen this young kid who we all really like. We all have a lot of hope in Francisco Alvarez, but this kid just cannot seem to stay healthy, especially early on in the season. He breaks a hamate bone, which, if you're not familiar with, it's like a little bone in your wrist. And most of the time when a baseball player breaks that bone, that's because they took a pitch on the inside and got hit on the wrist. We've seen it time and time again. I believe Pete Alonso had this done a couple of years ago by Charlie Morton. And, we've seen this act. We've seen this song and dance before. The odd thing, the anomaly of this injury that Francisco Alvarez suffered is that it happened in a batting practice session. There was no contact with any ball or anything to his wrist or his hamate bone. It was, it was just the act of him swinging the bat, which to me is far more alarming than anything, because that just tells me, even though the Mets have denied it, that tells me that maybe his wrist wasn't even fully healthy, or, which is even more scary, maybe he's just, now his wrist and the bones in there are just so weakened that maybe this is just going to be a problem he's going to deal with throughout his career. And man, I can't tell you, especially for a catcher that is supposed to have a big bat dealing with an injury like that, this is the last place that you want to have that injury.
Yeah, exactly. It's the last place, and I gotta hope he returns fine. Hopefully, it's not too bad. He got this injury happened during spring training, so it's gonna be less than a regular season. That he'll be back mid-April. Thinking my fingers crossed. Also, can for once the Mets have a player with the powers of the Bruce Willis's character in the movie Unbreakable, instead of a player having the powers of Mr. Glass in that same movie? Because that's what I feel like Alvarez has.
Exactly. We were talking about it on our Patreon show the other day, because and what you're referencing too is that, I used to have a nickname for David Wright. As much as I love David Wright, he was always healthy. So I used to call him the Glass Man. And what me and you were saying about Alvarez is that Alvarez is kind of taking up that mantle of being the new Glass Man. And, look, the guy, and he missed 62 games last year too. He played at 100 exactly. So he missed 62. Now, not all of that was due to injury. The Mets obviously had a good backup catcher last year in Luis Torrens that played a fair amount of games after Alvarez rejoined the team in June. But, I mean, that just goes to show you, this is a guy that the Mets need in the lineup 130 to 140 times a year, and he's missing double that amount of games. Now, this is a guy that you want to build around. This is a guy you want to see significant progress from this year. Let's not forget, this is a guy that 2 years ago hit 26 home runs in the regular season in that bad 2023 season for the team. Last year, he had 11 home runs and 47 RBIs. So, he has not been able to put together a full good season yet, and he won't be able to do it this year because he's going to be missing the first basically 2 months of the season. So maybe we'll see him in mid-May, maybe we'll see him in early June. Who knows? But I hope that it's quicker than that because the Mets need Francisco Alvarez back as quickly as possible if they're going to be a big time contender this year. Because let's not forget too, the guy had a pretty good postseason run last year too. He might have started off a little slow, but by the time that series wrapped up with the Dodgers, Alvarez was one of the Mets' most dangerous bats to come out. So the Mets are going to need him if they're going to be in the thick of things this year.
Yeah, exactly. They needed to come back. Also, hopefully, the Torrens could hold the fort. I feel like that we'll be in good hands there to forward. The backup catcher I saw a couple of days ago looks like he's faring very well. Probably going to be the backup catcher until Alvarez gets back. So I feel like we might be holding the fort there, and we got early enough, and we have enough bats in our lineup that I feel it's not going to be too much of a loss there.
Yeah, and you mentioned Torrens, who we just saw in Port St. Lucie a couple of days ago, hit an opposite field 2-run shot. This is a guy that has a decent bat, and when he came up last year, really invigorated this team and really got the Met fan base behind him because he had a lot of key hits early on. But you can't also forget that the guy still ended up hitting 229 last year. So while he did produce a lot early on, that a lot of that went away as the season went along, and we tend to forget that. So I really hope that we see more of the early Luis Torrens from 2024 rather than the late. We're gonna have to hope that he gives the Mets something because right now the Mets are looking at a backup catcher, Jackson Reitz, from he's a non-roster invitee this year. He's got some major league experience, I believe, with the Chicago Cubs. So it's going to be interesting to see if they go with him. There's a couple other guys out there. Yasmani Grandal is actually a free agent right now that they could go after. Should they want to take a look at a vet? Also, former Met James McCann is out there. And Tomas Nido is a non-roster invitee in another camp right now. So, if the Mets aren't that impressed with Jackson Reitz, they could go out and look outside of the organization. But if I had to take a guess right now, Dan, I think they're probably going to stick with their catchers.
Yeah, exactly. I feel that's what the Mets are going to do, stick with their catchers.
Yeah. All right, another couple of things real quick. It was nice seeing David Wright at Mets camp this week. He's getting his number 5 retired later this year. So seeing David Wright walking around Port St. Lucie always brings back good memories for any good Mets fan. And what David got to see today, too, was the Grapefruit 2025, the Grapefruit League debut for 2025 of the Mets' big bullpen acquisition from this offseason, left-hander A.J. Minter. The former Braves went out there. The Mets ended up winning the game today, 2-0 against the St. Louis Cardinals, by the way. But the better thing was that A.J. Minter went out and had a clean inning. He looked good. He was throwing about 93 miles an hour, which is pretty much on point for him. And he's got his sights set on opening day. And if, the Mets are lucky enough to come out of spring training with a healthy bullpen and A.J. Minter ready to go, that's going to be a big plus for this team.
Yeah, exactly. I expect him to be like a big part of the bullpen, and I think another big thing that's going to be in a season is getting these pitchers to throw more innings. I feel like, and keeping the weight off the bullpen. They really need to do that, and I also feel that needs to play a factor when it comes trading deadline. If we're right there to trading deadline, I feel like the thing they really need to go is pitching, is find that pitcher that could throw more innings. I feel like if they need to find that's what they need to find available.
Yeah,
and I feel like depending how Seattle does the course and stuff, Luis Castillo really be that option. I feel like that's going to be another thing we got to keep an eye on. is maybe keep an eye on how Luis Castillo's performance and how
Well,
well he's
that's going to
performing in Seattle and where Seattle is.
yeah, that's going to depend on a couple of things, Dan, too, because obviously Seattle's performance is going to mean a lot in that. And, he's under contract for another couple of years. So if you're going to want to make that deal, you're going to have to give up something good for him. This isn't going to be, any of these. You're going to have to give up a couple of top prospects. So that's not going to be happening until at least July.
Yeah, and I feel like we have a surplus of like catching and shortstop.
Yeah, but then the thing is, they're not going to want Kevin Parada and Ronnie Mauricio, who nobody even know. You know what I mean? Like if you're going to want a guy like Luis Castillo from Seattle, you're going to have to be willing to give up a guy like Jet Williams or Drew Gilbert or both of them or Brandon Sprout or Blade Tidwell. You know what I mean? It's going to take a top guy. It's they're not going to take one of these crappy catchers or shortstops.
Yeah, I feel like maybe some of the others that as a set, I feel like that aside from Brandon Sprout and Drew Gilbert, I feel like there some of the other pieces we have really need to be considered. They need to consider moving for potentially what we a major hole that the Mets might need filled. Take advantage of what you have enough of, because what you don't have enough of.
I'm with you on that, man, and I think that just about wraps it up here for us with the Mets talk. However, there is one last thing I wanted to get your opinion on before we close the show out today, and we are just about a month away from WrestleMania. Me and you, we don't really talk professional wrestling that much on the show. However, last year we did a WrestleMania show, right? I think it was the weekend of WrestleMania 40 last year. We talked about it and got a lot of good reviews from the fans. So I figure if you're into it, Dan, we'll do another WrestleMania show prior to the event this year where we'll give our thoughts and opinions on it. Maybe we'll do it live on the Saturday of the WrestleMania Night 1. But before we get into all of that, I just want to get your opinion, Dan. What did you think of John Cena turning heel just a week or two ago? I was going to bring it up last week, but I was still getting over my illness and just I forgot about it and didn't get to talk about it with you. But if you're not familiar, at Elimination Chamber, the last WWE pay-per-view prior to WrestleMania, there was this whole confrontation where The Rock came out and was asking the WWE champion Cody Rhodes to quote unquote sell his soul to him and become his champion, become a bad guy. Basically, The Rock, the final boss, is the big bad guy right now in WWE. Cody Rhodes told him so eloquently to go fuck yourself, and John Cena shakes his hand, and then we see the iconic John Cena heel turn where that big Cena smile we all know suddenly went gray and he turned into the bad guy, John Cena, and they beat down Cody Rhodes, and now it's all set up. WrestleMania, Cody, the all-time babyface, against Cena, the big-time heel now. Dan, what did you think about that heel turn?
That was just a complete shocker, and I feel like this is definitely something that doesn't surprise me, and I feel like that I knew that Cena, he's potentially retiring from wrestling to commit full time to his film career, which has included some memorable roles, especially upcoming this Peacemaker season 2. I feel is upcoming. I feel like Cena was going to go out with a bang. I feel like I would not expect someone who's potentially going to be a WWE Hall of Famer to not go out with a bang. His farewell tour, and he's living up to that, and I expect this is going to be a very anticipated WrestleMania 2 nights in over in a city that's I call Ticketmaster City because of how expensive and hidden fees on everything in Las Vegas is these days.
Right. That's right, man. Well, hey, I'm totally with you on that. I think you pretty much called it perfectly that, if John Cena is going to go out, he's going to go out with a bang. So I'm totally with you on that.
Yeah. And I heard rumors potentially that there could be a match with Ric Flair and John Cena.
There will be no Ric Flair match. There's no way.
Yeah, I don't think
I know people. I know Flair himself wants to start that. He even tweeted out and said that because
Yeah.
if John Cena does win the championship, he'll break Ric Flair's record. Right now, they both have 16 World Heavyweight Championships all time. If John Cena beats Cody Rhodes at WrestleMania, he'll break that for a 17th championship. And Ric Flair has said that he will fight his way through the audience to prevent that. Now, I know it kind of sounds like it's setting up for a match in the future, but there is no way WWE's medical personnel people would ever clear Ric Flair to have a match in that organization ever again.
Yeah, I don't think that's gonna happen. It would be epic to see that, but I really don't feel like that's gonna happen at this
Yeah,
point.
yeah,
It's pretty much right gotten to the point where I we speaking of wrestlers that have been around for years, that I don't even think we're gonna see the Undertaker return in WrestleMania this time, because I feel like even that, for those his annual WrestleMania appearance, I feel like he's just pretty much had to pretty much not uh, probably not going to come back from the dead in
yeah.
terms
I'm
of
with you.
character. It's
Yeah, no,
probably
you're right. You're right because look, he'll be there and he'll wave and everything. He's doing a new TV show at WWE now, so he'll be out there, but he's not going to wrestle. I agree with you on that. I think that's unfortunately, Dan, we're getting old enough that all the guys that we saw growing up that were the cornerstones, like Hulk Hogan and the Undertaker and all these guys we grew up with, it's kind of aged out now. So and it's funny, even John Cena is at the end of his run.
yeah, and I feel like the final bosses thing that The Rock is doing is, I feel like he's gearing up for potentially a farewell tour this time. Like this time, it's gonna be a farewell tour. I feel like,
Yeah, you're
I cannot
probably
tell you how
right.
many times we've seen The Rock retire then come back. I feel like The Rock is maybe having a year or two before he has his little swan song in wrestling.
Well, the thing with The Rock now too is that he is one of the big bosses of WWE. He's on the board that owns the WWE of TKO. So I think what they're trying to do is, I don't know how much we're going to see him wrestle, but I think the whole final boss thing is more that they want him to be like that Vince McMahon bad guy boss character. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I can see that. I feel like The Rock is gonna become a Vince McMahon thing, and I
Yeah.
feel like the next generation Anthony Cumia will be doing just like how Anthony Cumia became known for doing those angry Vince McMahon impressions. And I'll tell you, I'll tell you a really funny story one time, all right? My mom, she's like visiting a friend. We're like visiting a friend in Connecticut, right? Who's like doing some stuff at some, I don't know, running some booth or something, says some stuff at some boat show in Connecticut, right? One of the people we run into and that's my mom's talking to, she was talking to Linda McMahon, who was like running for office or something, right? Like one of my mom's first time talking to Linda McMahon, right? So McMahon, and right next to Vince is Vince McMahon, and I freaking gotta find this photo. He was like asking, "Oh, you want a photo?" And it's like I freaking took a photo with Vince McMahon. I'm saying, I can't believe I'm seeing this guy talk, and I'm just trying in my head not to laugh, because in
Mm.
my head I'm thinking, just it's reminding me of those impressions of Anthony. Like
Anthony, yep. And
it was
Anthony
like
does a
weird,
great
and
Vince McMahon.
I just thought it was weird. Like, how the heck am I talking to? I'm talking to Vince McMahon of all people.
Yeah,
Because I'm
yeah,
thinking
exactly.
I'm thinking of that freaking impression of the impression. But I feel like there's gonna be a comedic radio host in the future. Hopefully, that might do impressions. I hope that maybe one day he shows up, might all of a sudden be doing impressions of The Rock. I just have a feeling that could happen in the future. Like, that's gonna be the generation that's gonna know, like, their equivalent of that generation's Anthony Cumia. I feel like.
That's right. And shout out to Anthony Cumias, by the way, who did his first show on WABC 770 here in New York,
Yep.
and already got syndicated. So shout out to a guy that me and you are both very fond of, and congratulations to Anthony.
Yeah. He's like on WABC now. He's like, this guy's pulling double duty now.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So you see, you still got his online show he does, which is more visual. So it's like weird. And You definitely have to listen to that. I think it's April 14th. That highly anticipated. I never thought I'd hear him, both him and I'm going to hear for his guest, Jim Norton, him and Jim Norton coming out of an AM/FM radio. Never thought I'd hear that again. Those two voices coming out of that radio that I pretty much use. I mean, I'm a physical media guy, so I still love my CDs and stuff. So that hearing that voice coming out of that radio is going to be weird.
That's true. So
I
April 14th, yeah.
Because I have a feeling that radio is mostly a lot of times when I'm in the backyard because the window is next to the back, the backyard. I've had the window open while I'm grilling, and you usually hear like the game or something that's going on. But hearing those two voices coming out of the radio that I haven't heard out of that radio in years, it's going to be something else.
That's right. So keep that date circled on your calendar, April 14th. Anthony and Jimmy back together. Always great to hear them. And on that note, Dan, I think that's going to do it for us today on this edition of Best Seat in the House podcast. Before we get out of here, do you have anything like to plug for yourself?
Sure, I got to plug my Twitter account, Bobo103NYC, Instagram, Bobo718DK. Also subscribe to our Patreon. You get this stuff like Trackside Minute, early access to my YouTube videos whenever I post them. I'll be reading up start Trackside Minute soon. I just had to go through a lot of stuff, some stuff with the family and stuff going on that I had been able to really think about Trackside Minute because I'm just trying to make sure everything's okay. So just all the stuff going on, which things are a little bit calming down. I'm sure you should follow me on social media. You know what I'm talking about. But yeah, that's been going on. But you'll be seeing that. I'll be giving update to everything from the last time you saw, all your Patreon subscribers saw Trackside Minute, and also all that access plus our exclusive Patreon show, $5, and you'll get to see this show live one day early. So you get that all for $5.
That's right, everybody. So make sure to join us on Patreon if you so please. We appreciate everybody that's already jumped in and hung out with us whenever we do our weekend shows, whenever we post our Bobo's Trackside Minute, whenever we do any pop-ups or anything like that. You always find out on Patreon first. So shout out to everybody that's already there. Shout out to anybody that's going to join, and want to thank everybody for hanging out with us here on this evening while we record this. That's going to do it for us today on this edition of Best Seat in the House podcast. As always, for my co-host, the great Daniel Bobo Curlin, I'm Rob Kramer, and we'll catch you next week, everybody. Have a great weekend.
All right. Push the button, Frank.